Hello everyone, this is Kylie Watson, and today I will be presenting a comprehensive review of a doctoral dissertation titled Perceptions of Interaction, Supports, and Connectedness of Elementary School Students with Emotional and Behavioral Disabilities in General Education Classrooms. This dissertation was presented by Nicole Werner, and it was very interesting and relevant for me to read it. As I am an emotional support teacher, and every student on my caseload has the diagnosis of emotional and behavioral disability. So I hope that you enjoy my presentation, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. So my purpose in my presentation is to provide a clear and concise understanding of the dissertation that I read, including its aims, contributions, methodologies, and its findings. I'm also going to share a critical evaluation and reflect on its implications and offer some suggestions for future research. Okay, so let's talk about the aims and the purpose of the study. So the primary aim of the dissertation was to explore how teacher and peer actions shape the perceptions and responses of elementary students with emotional and behavioral disorders in the general education settings. I'm going to refer to emotional and behavioral disorders as EBD throughout the remainder of this presentation. So the study sought to understand how the actions, behaviors, and interactions of teachers and peers contribute to the academic, behavioral, emotional, and social experiences of these students. Ms. Werner sought to answer 4 critical questions throughout her study. Number 1 was, how do elementary students with EBD perceive teacher and peer actions in the general education setting? Number 2, how do these actions influence their responses in academic, behavioral, social, and emotional contexts? Number 3, how do these interactions affect student-teacher and peer relationships? And 4, how do teacher and peer actions shape classroom connectedness for these students? This dissertation is significant because it addresses critical gaps in the understanding of how teacher and peer actions influence the experiences of elementary students with EBD in general education settings. The findings provide insights that can inform policy, improve classroom practices, and promote inclusivity for students with EBD. Historically, from what I've known and what I've researched, most research on students with EBD has relied on teacher reports, administrative data, quantitative measures to assess student outcomes. So this study really shifts the focus by amplifying the voices of students with EBD and allowing them to express their own perceptions, emotions, and responses to the teacher and their peer actions. By incorporating these student perspectives, the study challenges traditional teacher-centered narratives and highlights the importance of understanding how students interpret and react to classroom dynamics. This insight can inform the design of student-centered interventions that resonate with the experiences of students with EBD. So let's get into the methodology and the research design. To address the research questions, the author employed a qualitative case study approach. This methodology was chosen because it allows for a deep exploration of real-life classroom interactions and student perceptions, something that some may argue may not be adequately captured through quantitative methods. The study was conducted in a rural county in a mid-Atlantic state with 3 elementary students with EBD as the primary participants. Additional data was collected from their general and special education teachers, as well as through peers to assess social relationships. To ensure a comprehensive analysis, the researcher utilized multiple methods of data collecting, including document analysis of IEPs, grades and discipline records, observations using the class observation system for teacher-student interactions and peer dynamics, standardized scales such as the STRS, which stands for Student-Teacher Relationship Scale, which provided teacher perspectives, the class map survey, which gauged classroom climate, and the Pupil Evaluation Inventory, or PEI, which assessed peer relationships. The researcher also used semi-structured interviews with both students and teachers. They were conducted every 3 weeks to capture changes in perceptions over time. So let's get into the data analysis of the qualitative methods in this study. To analyze all of the collected data, she employed a constant comparative method, which I had to dive a bit deeper into our readings in this module and use a few other sources outside of our materials to really get a better understanding of what a constant comparative method is. And it's a well-established qualitative data analysis technique that ensures that themes emerge organically from the data. It involves a repetitive process where new data is continuously compared to previously coded data to ensure and identify that patterns emerge, themes, and relationships. A cross-case analysis was also used to compare findings across the participants. Now, in a cross-case analysis, it's a qualitative research technique used to compare and contrast findings from multiple cases within the study, and it involves identifying similarities and differences across individual cases to develop a better understanding and uncover more themes or patterns. And she actually, as I read through the dissertation, she was able to examine variations in responses and experiences across the 3 cases. So some similarities were that all 3 students reported that positive reinforcement from teachers improved their sense of classroom connectedness. She found that each student highlighted the importance of peer support in fostering a positive learning environment. And one difference was that one student responded more positively to teacher praise, while another preferred peer affirmation as a motivating factor. So the triangulation of data sources was used also to enhance the validity and the reliability of the study. So this involves gathering the information from different types of data sources, such as the interviews, the observations, the document analysis of the IEPs, to gain a more comprehensive and accurate understanding. Okay. She also used grades, the assessment scoring system, and the semi-structured interviews with students and teachers every 3 weeks. So here's my summary of the findings. The study revealed that both protective and risk factors in the actions of teachers and peers significantly shaped the perceptions and responses of students with EBD. First, protective teacher actions included emotional understanding, individualized support, consistent use of positive behavioral reinforcement, and facilitating of opportunities for peer support. These actions contributed to students feeling heard, safe, and respected. In contrast, risk teacher actions included an over-reliance on behavioral correction, rigid rule enforcement without flexibility, and a lack of individualized approaches. Teachers who focused more on fixing the behavior rather than supporting the student holistically often had strained relationships with the students. From the peer perspective, protective actions included offering academic help, inviting students with EBD into social activities, and providing verbal encouragement. These interactions improved students' self-esteem and their sense of belonging. However, the risk peer actions such as exclusion, verbal aggression, and low peer likability scores contributed to feelings of rejection, isolation, and frustration among students. The findings also emphasize the importance of strong student, teacher, and peer relationships in promoting classroom connectedness. Students were more engaged and emotionally regulated when they felt valued by both teachers and peers. Notably, the tone set by the teacher often influenced the behavior of peers, and reinforcing the idea that teachers play a pivotal role in shaping classroom climate. Overall, it showed that positive teacher and peer relationships directly impacted academic engagement, behavioral regulation, and emotional well-being for students with EBD. So, one piece of my evaluation and my reflection that I would like to point out after reading the dissertation is the notable strengths that I was able to pull. The first was the use of multiple data collection methods. This really allowed for a rich and qualitative data that provided a more holistic understanding of the experiences of students with EBD. Secondly, the study provided the voices of the students with EBD themselves. It prioritized it, actually, in fact, a group that is often overlooked in educational research. By capturing how these students were perceiving and responding to teacher and peer actions, the study provides a firsthand insight that deepens our understanding of the experiences of students with EBD in general education settings. And third and lastly, the researcher was able to employ reflective journaling, which mitigated bias and added a layer of rigor to the data collection and the analysis process. It enhances the credibility of the findings by acknowledging and addressing potential sources of bias. So, on the other end of my evaluation and reflection upon reading this dissertation was finding some limitations. And firstly, I noticed that it had limited generalizability. With only 3 participants, the findings can't be generalized to a larger population of students with EBD. While the qualitative case study data and design provided a rich and detailed insight into the perceptions and responses of these students, the small sample size limits the ability to generalize findings to a broader population of students with EBD. Secondly, it still has potential to have single observer bias. Observations were conducted by a single researcher, which may introduce bias. While the researcher maintained the reflective journals and engaged in reflexivity to mitigate the bias, the absence of multiple observers or independent coders increases the risk of observer bias, and it's open to subjective interpretation. And thirdly, the external variables were not controlled. That may influence student responses, right? So, for example, factors such as hunger, lack of sleep, emotional stress from home environments, or changes in routine very well could have affected how students perceived and reacted to teacher and peer actions. So again, although the researcher worked to maintain consistency in the classroom setting, these external factors it's beyond the scope of control and could have impacted the findings. So I also want to say that while these limitations do not detract from the importance of the study, they just suggest areas for improvement in future research. So to segue into more suggestions and my reflections, this study really highlights the importance of understanding how students with EBD perceive and respond to teacher and peer actions. It reinforces the need for teachers to adopt a flexible and student-centered approach to foster stronger connections and improve student outcomes. Some suggestions I have for future research, I recommend including multiple observers. Incorporating additional observers could reduce the risk of bias and provide a more diverse range of observations. A longitudinal study would be very interesting. The study only took place within a school year from September to June. A longer duration would allow researchers to assess long-term impact of teacher and peer actions. And then finally, expanding the sample size, including a larger, more diverse participant group, would definitely increase the generalizability of the findings. So here are my questions for future research. Number 1, how can professional development programs be adapted to reflect the findings of the study? Since teacher actions play such a significant role in shaping the experiences of students with EBD and students in the general education classroom for that matter, future research could explore how professional development programs could equip teachers with strategies to foster classroom connectedness. It would be very valuable to investigate which coaching models or training approaches best support teachers in implementing, say, trauma-informed practices and relationship building techniques. Number 2, what specific teacher strategies can be used to improve classroom connectedness for students with EBD? Another important question is identifying which specific strategies, such as positive reinforcement, restorative practices, or relationship building, which ones are the most effective in creating a sense of belonging for our students with EBD. Exploring these strategies could provide teachers with a toolbox of techniques to improve student engagement and connectedness. And then finally, how can peer interactions be better leveraged to promote inclusion in the general education setting? Peer relationships play a critical role in fostering positive learning experiences and environments. Future research could explore how peer mentoring programs, or like a buddy system, cooperative learning models, or conflict resolution strategies could be used to create a more inclusive and supportive environment for students with EBD. So to summarize, the dissertation provides valuable insights into how teacher and peer actions influence the perceptions and responses of elementary students with EBD. The study emphasizes the importance of understanding student perspectives to create an inclusive and supportive environment. In addition, the aim was not to only analyze how teacher and peer actions influence the perceptions and responses of students with EBD, but also to identify practices to enhance classroom connectedness and promote a more supportive learning environment. Now, while the study has certain limitations, it, in my opinion, paves the way for future research that can build on its findings and inform professional practices in education. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I look forward to discussing the findings and hearing your feedback on my presentation.